Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today we're going back to some Battlefield 3 gameplay. We're going to do some comparisons between BF3 and BF4 and see what we've gained and potentially lost. Now, I always find it important to go back to a game's previous generations, previous titles, to really just hammer in what we've actually gained, because a lot of people compare the titles to the previous titles without actually going back and playing them. They just sort of base their opinions on their memories, which can be fairly accurate or way off the mark. I remember going back to play 1942 one time, and just my memories of that game were so great, you know, the game just being amazing, and I got back into it, and the time it takes to get into action and this pacing of the game is just so crazy slow that although you were used to it at the time that you were playing, you remember it being better than it was, or you just remember the experience being different. And at the time, I'm sure it was a great game, but as gaming culture changes and evolves, we basically develop tastes for different styles of gameplay, which doesn't necessarily make older games bad, they just make them different and not quite up to the same speed that we're used to. So enough yammering. This is actually my first time playing Battlefield 3 since Battlefield 4 came out. I really haven't looked back, but now that I have gone back to Battlefield 3, I was enjoying every single second that I played this game, which is very different from my experience in Battlefield 4 right now. In Battlefield 4, I've developed a habit of actually throwing my headphones after games or after certain deaths, because it's just such a rage-inducing experience with the off-putting netcode. And I never had that the whole time I was playing Battlefield 3, and I was thinking, like, am I just getting older? Am I starting to get grumpy with games? No, Battlefield 4 has rage-inducing netcode. I played many games of Battlefield 3, enjoyed every single moment of them. Even when I died, I was like, oh, you know what, that guy got the better of me, or I really should have been watching that corner. And it's nice to have a game where you feel like when you actually lose, it's because you made a mistake and not because the engine just isn't portraying what's going on accurately. And when I hopped back into Battlefield 3 after playing BF4 for so long, the first thing I noticed was just how snappy the engine felt. The hit markers that I get on players seem to be instantaneous, whereas in Battlefield 4 there is a slight delay. Things that you forget about and don't notice because you've been playing BF4 so long, but go back and play Battlefield 3. I urge anybody who's actually got the game and has been playing BF4 for a while to go back, try out Battlefield 3, and just witness how much snappier all the combat feels. The fact that you get multiple hit markers from enemies, the fact that you can get shot by an enemy and you have enough time to react and duck behind cover before you're dead. This is something that I rarely experience in BF4, but is commonplace in Battlefield 3. So the netcode difference between BF3 and BF4 really is drastic. It's very easy to tell. On the bright side, I do know that the devs are conducting some tests. They're even inviting players into them. If you've been on Reddit lately, you'll notice that players have been invited into some test servers to really try out different netcode concepts. I don't know how successful these tests have been, but it would be great if they could get Battlefield 4 at least to the state where BF3 was. I mean, you gotta wonder what they actually did to the network code between Battlefield 3 and BF4 to turn it into the state that it currently is. Now, looking at other differences between Battlefield 3 and BF4, one of the cool things that I've noticed now that I've played Battlefield 4 for so many months without playing BF3 at all is the graphics. The graphics in BF4 really are better. The specular maps are great. The reflections, the lighting in general has seen an overall improvement. The artwork has also gotten a lot better. Soldiers are much more detailed in BF4. Specular maps on guns look really great as you sort of move around in the environment. They reflect the environment really well, make you feel like you're immersed in this actual living, breathing world. And when all these elements come together in Battlefield 4, it does instill a sense of enhanced realism, you know. Netcode aside, if we were just looking at the visuals of it, the immersion effect of BF4 is much more significant than BF3. And when the game first came out, people often equated it to, and when I say people, myself included, equated it to Battlefield 3.5 because it really didn't look like the engine had seen too many improvements. But overall, I will really give the devs credit for making it visually much more impressive. I would say we've also seen a pretty big game mode shift between Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. Battlefield 4 certainly has a lot of larger conquest maps with a lot of vehicular oriented gameplay. I'm not saying we didn't have that in BF3, but the game modes seem to be more prevalent in BF4. Also, BF4 has seemed to sort of do away with rush, not necessarily intentionally, but the game mode has been broken for a long time. Certain rush maps just haven't been well developed or well balanced, and it seems to have kind of died out. It's very hard to find some good rush servers. There's one or two here or there, but you really got to look for them hard. And rush was a big part of Battlefield 3. It was a big part of the previous games, and it seems to be getting less and less popular, and this is really disappointing to me because I think it was actually one of the more team-oriented game modes and one of the more action-intense game modes at the same time. Domination has really taken over as one of the more popular game modes now, and it's kind of supplementing Team Deathmatch in a way. It's essentially TDM with a few objectives in the mix. They don't really reward you with a lot of points, but they do kind of determine which team wins. I think a lot of players still play Domination as if it were just TDM and ignore the objectives in general. But personally, I kind of like the switch over to Domination as it is slightly more team-oriented than Team Deathmatch. Now, of course, one of the bigger changes in Battlefield 4 versus BF3 is Commander Mode. They brought it back for BF4. It's something we didn't have in Battlefield 3, and it's something especially apparent now that Second Assault has come out and we can experience some of the BF3 maps back again in Battlefield 4. Commander Mode has really added an extra element to these things. Personally, I didn't want it. I think it's one of those situations where less actually is more, where not having Commander Mode ended up being more strategic gameplay, and having Commander Mode in weird, small, infantry-oriented maps where they can use a UAV to pinpoint every single person on the map seems like sort of game-breaking mechanics, and I really feel like Commander Mode wasn't thought out very well. I certainly don't like seeing things like the AC-130 on Caspian border. Cruise missiles seem to fall into that same sort of lump of visually cool, visually neat to see from afar, but when you're in the thick of it, when you're actually getting hammered by a cruise missile and AC-130s, it's not very fun. Now, on the plus side, Battlefield 4 certainly has done a bunch of things right. I would say the weapon customization has gotten significantly better. Weapon control, weapon manipulation has become more difficult in Battlefield 4. And after going back to BF3 and just having a breeze trying to shoot people from long range with your average assault rifles, I was thinking, you know, Battlefield 4, it's a lot harder to hit people at longer ranges. Recoil control is a lot harder, and it sort of puts a higher skill level on things. And I think that's something that every game should really have, is a skill level that can really allow you to keep getting better and better and better the more you play. Better recoil control and stuff like that. Whereas in Battlefield 3, I felt you could hit that skill cap fairly quickly. Now back to the less is more concept, Battlefield 4 did another thing right, which is getting rid of the overly powerful suppression effects from BF3. Battlefield 3 suppression is crazy. Getting back into it from being used to the Battlefield 4 suppression is a nightmare. Not only does it visually make things so much more difficult to see, but your aim just turns to garbage. Overall, there are actually a huge number of improvements in Battlefield 4 over Battlefield 3. The only problem is that the underlying netcode, which really is holding the game back, just doesn't allow Battlefield 4 to be a superior game yet. I really hope the devs get on this, fix this netcode, make the engine feel snappier. If they can get it up to the point where Battlefield 3 was, I mean, even better than that would be great, but if they can just match Battlefield 3's responsiveness, they will have a superior game on all fronts. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think, what you missed from Battlefield 3, what you think BF4 did better, and I'll see you guys next time. This is LevelCap, signing off.